We're doing a virtual interview in studio, which is so exciting. We're here in the Hartford iHeartMedia headquarters. So excited to have you back in the studio, Tara.
I know, it's good to be here. And I love being flexible, always learning something new.
Yes. So we're on virtual with our next guest, and I'm super, super excited for our next guest because I consider myself like diehard sports fan, sports enthusiast. I watch ESPN all the time. I listen to Talk Sports Radio. I'm just a nut about sports. And our next guest is very heavily into sports. But Tara, you're not so into sports.
Not really. I mean, I'll go to an event and have a great time, but I don't follow sports the way you do.
She thought March Madness was a sale. There's that. So without further ado, we are honored to have the president of content at ESPN, Burke Magnus, join us on the Well Off podcast. Welcome, Burke.
Everybody, how you doing? Nice to see you both, and excited to have a nice conversation.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
We are so excited. So, you're on a ton of podcasts, you're on a ton of shows, you're, on the Dan Patrick Show, all of the things. And you heavily talk about sports and what's happening at ESPN. And while we definitely want to dive into that, this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about you today.
Yeah, that's a little nerve-wracking for me. I have good answers to things about sports, and but I'm game for a little self reflection here.
We love it.
So as Gina said, Burke, I am not a sports aficionado. I don't despise them. I like them. I'm just not knowledgeable. But what I'm curious about is who are you and how did you get into this field and working for such a huge company like ESPN?
Yeah, I guess I would say that I took a fairly non-traditional route, other than the fact that I grew up playing sports and loving sports, and I had a father who took me to a lot of games, and I grew up in northern New Jersey, so we had a wealth of teams in every sport, and it was kind of like always the background of my childhood, if you will, growing up, because my father was a huge sports fan, and I think he took it as a responsibility to indoctrinate me properly with the right teams and the right fandom and everything else, and then I just played a bunch of different things, a bunch of different sports growing up, so it was always a huge part of my life as I grew as a person. And when I got out of college, and by the way, the non-traditional part was I was a history major in college. This was a while ago. And I went to a small Catholic liberal arts college called Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. And,
Yes, we're familiar.
yeah, I got a wonderful education, but it's not like there was being a broadcast journalism major or sport management major or anything like that. That was not on the curriculum at Holy Cross. So I picked history because I liked it, and and I found like I did better in the things that I like. Stands to reason, honestly. So I was a history major, which didn't really prepare me in any way for professionally for the career that I have now, other than the fact that and I'm a big supporter of the liberal arts curriculum, because you just learn how to communicate, and you learn how to write, and you learn how to have interpersonal relationships with people, and it proved to be very handy in a professional capacity. I just committed myself to, after college, to trying to get into this industry somehow, some way. And ultimately, through a long and winding process, I ended up at ESPN in 1995 in an entry-level job, and I've been here now 30 years, like
Wow.
right this week, right now. I think I started in late February of 1995. So essentially my whole career here, not literally, but for the purposes of this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're the epitome of climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and again, like so much of life I've found is what's your passion, right? And I guess that's what I meant by my intro there, which is sports was the only thing that really ever got me going, and that I was passionate about in whether it was playing or whether it was being a fan. And so, it took me a little while after college, but I figured in order to have a really satisfying professional career, it had to be something that I was passionate about and not just a job. And so that's when I said to myself, okay, I'm going to take whatever time it takes to get into the business. I didn't have any connections, so I didn't know anyone. Parents didn't know anyone. There was none of that. So I just said, I'm going to dedicate, whatever time it takes to get into sport. I didn't even know what it meant when I was saying that. Like, what does sports mean as a job?
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to land not just in sports, in television/media, which the combination of those two things is really what works for me. And so as a result, it's always been, I've always been really happy at ESPN, and there's been tons of opportunity for me along the way. And that's been great. So, I don't know. It wasn't what I thought coming out of college, but
Sure.
I'm certainly happy that it worked out this way.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And you have a very high profile job. There's a lot expected of you. You do a lot of things. Tell us about, maybe some of the content that you've created on ESPN and how that's evolved.
Yeah, this is a really interesting time right now because the entire media industry is transforming and has been now for, a number of years. We can get into the pandemic and impact, that's a separate incident, if you will, but huge. In many ways, it's the reason we're having a podcast over Zoom right now, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Pre-pandemic, I would have hopped in the car and come down. I probably should have anyway, but because we're not.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. But allowed this kind of thing to be true, to be workable. Anyway, the media sector is transforming. Television as we know it is changing underneath our feet. The impact of streaming, in concert with a linear television is a fascinating thing to have a front row seat for.
Yeah.
And sports is different than, and this is a positive for us here at ESPN, but sports is different than most other kinds of content because it really demands, for the most part, demands to be consumed live, right? I was at the big USA-Canada hockey game last night. Like, it's not something, if you were interested in it, that you're going to record or watch later, or, you can't subsequently avoid finding out what the score is. And, so you have to watch it live. And that's a real benefit for sports in this media ecosystem because it has kept us at the forefront of content in a different way than you see in entertainment. I'm sure you are all subscribers to various, streaming forums.
Of course.
And my wife, by the way, who is not a sports fan really at all.
Well, she and I can go shopping.
And I can go to the game.
We can go to March Madness together and see if there's any sales, right?
Yeah.
By the way, she provides great balance for me because,
Yes.
I'm sports full time and she's not. So we make a good partnership. We have a good partnership in that way. But I mentioned her because as a non-sports fan, she could exist, perfectly fine with just, a Netflix subscription and
So she and I are destined to be best friends.
Now, the difference being, if you're a sports fan, you really still have to be plugged in to a variety of things, including multi-channel, like cable television in the past, or streaming. But you kind of have to have it all because your content is everywhere, and it's on ESPN and it's on CBS, or NFL is on Fox, or all of these things you have to have, and it is it's powerful because it cuts through that dynamic with challenges around traditional television. So, long story short, it's a good place to be at this moment in time because as we go down these two different paths, television, the old legacy television business and the new world of streaming, sports exists powerfully in both of those environments.
You know what I'm curious about, Burke? Because I grew up in North Jersey as well. And, we had 11 channels maybe, and rich people had cable and ESPN was on cable. So, so much has changed in the decades that you've been there. Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest?
Yeah, I think back on this often because when I started in 1995, think about this for a second. There were no smartphones.
Right.
Yeah.
There was barely the internet, right? And something that like scientists used.
I was at the library and the encyclopedias trying to read my reports,
So you knew, like, you kind of had an inkling that something was coming called the internet that would revolutionize how people accessed information. But but it was really television, right? Like, and when I say television, I mean television, like not, not TV or streaming or Roku or anything like that. So, people would tune in and you had, remember the old NBC slogan, must see TV, or like,
Yeah, Thursday night.
wanted to watch Cheers or Friends, like you watched it at Thursday night at 8 o'clock.
Right.
And that on the entertainment side is completely gone. Like you now, if you're interested in a show, you watch it on your own terms, right? You can dial it up whenever you want. You binge 8 episodes in a row, or you can watch one at a time.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. Like the consumer control access to entertainment content, kind of full stop. And the point I was making on sports is that it's still kind of destination television. NFL games happen at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to be there if you want to see your team play. So that's what I mean by it cuts through in a different way. And really the power of live content. And this holds true a little bit for news as well, because, the day-to-day news reporting, but when big things happen in the world, people flock to watch news to get information. So it's really sports news, and then there's a couple what I would call big live events that happen every year, mostly like award shows, and so you watch the Oscars.
Yeah.
You don't watch the Oscars after, you watch it live, So,
Right. Yeah.
So that's different.
The Tom Brady roast.
Yeah, Tom. But the biggest transformation I think has been, the internet applied to smartphone technology, where everybody has all the information they need in their pocket all the time. The question quite frequently, who does ESPN see as their primary competitor?
Mhm.
And they're, usually people are expecting me to say, oh, it's Fox or it's CBS or it's NBC or something. And it's really not. We're in the business of getting people's time. And so the biggest competition we have for attention is whatever else somebody could be doing, right? So we're fighting for share of time. That's where sports really, really is powerful. But, it's a different world altogether.
Yeah.
Obviously goes without saying. But that's what I would say. Probably the internet / smartphones and the way they have changed consumer behavior for content generally.
They also change behavior, so if I'm not going to be able to watch a game, maybe I'm recording it and I'm going to, I have to turn off all my ESPN alerts because I don't, it's in real time, like, hey, they won, hey, they lost, or they scored, or, so you're getting all those alerts.
That's right.
If you're a sports fan. If you're a sports fan, you're getting all those alerts. But going back to your role at ESPN, so you have been responsible for a lot of the partnerships that you guys have acquired. Talk to us about how was it to manage that and to execute? I mean, it's got to be a lot of pressure and stress and all the things.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And it is. Here's another sort of differentiator of the sports business as opposed to any other form of content, is that for the most part, first of all, the most powerful thing we have from a content perspective is live games, right? So, and the big difference here is that we license that content from the leagues, right? So from the NBA or the NFL or the Big Ten or SEC on the college side, standalone events like Wimbledon or the Masters or the US Open. So, partnerships from the league perspective and relative to the content that we license that fuels our entire business is absolutely critical, right? And this is despite the profile of the sports business, it's a very small business, a very small industry, and relationships with our partners on the content side is really the lifeblood of what we do. And so that was my specialty for many years. I was the person doing the rights acquisitions to partner with the leagues to get the content to put on ESPN. And that's where interpersonal relationships and positive business relationships, understanding that it can't always be good news. One of the strengths of a good relationship is that you can also get through difficult times together because there's a certain level of trust and understanding between the two sides. So it's a critically important part of our business because we can't just get NFL games. We have to license them from the
license them, yeah.
And they have to like us and trust us and want to put their content on our platform.
Yeah, I mean, because if, we just think ESPN is the hub for all sports and everybody just automatically goes there, but there's actually a ton of work behind the scenes to get these partnerships and to get this executed.
Yeah. And, the other big difference from our perspective is that we're on 24/7, right? So, there's a lot of big games in a lot of different places, but, most of the other networks, virtually all of them, do sports as a part of their content offering, not the entire thing. So,
Right.
the other thing we're really proud of is that we're sort of have this always on mentality, Sports Center, covering sports, reporting on sports, being the home base for fans when they turn on, their TV or they pull out their phone. Where do they go first? We want them to go to ESPN, and we want them to know that they're going to find what they're looking for there.
So Burke, I couldn't help but be fascinated by Caitlin Clark and all of the buzz around her, and why are salaries less for female athletes? Because people are not watching them as much as male athletes. So where do you see this evolution going with women in professional sports?
I think it has, by the way, I love that you're tracking on that, because whenever a person, right, yeah, no, but you bring up a very important point. Like in our, the upside is getting light or casual fans like yourself to care about something. Right?
Yeah, true.
And Caitlin became, an incredible phenomenon over the last 2 years, and continue to be so now that she's in the WNBA, and interest in women's college basketball in the WNBA are at record highs, and kind of like with no end in sight, which is great.
Yes.
We do laugh a little bit over here because we've been doing the WNBA for 27 years.
It just happened. It just started like last year, right?
No joke. I call it a 25-year overnight success.
So funny.
But listen, I think women's sports has finally, hit the, turn the corner, if you will, in terms of there's no looking back relative to its viability, relative to the significance of the interest in it. And not just basketball. Basketball gets most of the attention because it's sort of the primary or biggest women's sport that there is. But we're finding a ton of interest in, particularly on the college level, in things like softball and soccer and volleyball and even gymnastics. Like some of these things are big deals in the Olympics, but then they disappear for 4 years and you don't.
Yeah.
And you kind of scratch your head going like, why do we all sit there watching swimming and gymnastics, and then when the Olympics is over, we just stop, Yeah,
and I always wonder, how do you see these qualification events? I would like to watch it when it isn't the Olympics.
Right.
Yeah. And with the transformation going on in college too, you also see a lot of Olympic athletes now going to college after the Olympics, right? So there's a ton of U.S. gymnastic athletes, for example, that then go to compete in college, and we put them on, So anyway, with women's sports, I think, thank goodness, we put a lot of work over decades trying to build interest. Every once in a while you get a phenomenon like Caitlin Clark that literally just cuts straight through, the zeitgeist and reaches people in a different way and drives interest in an unprecedented way. And, that's what's going to fuel, I think, interest, not just in basketball, but in women's sports broadly for many years. And so we're thrilled about it.
Yeah. There's a lot of pioneers. I'm obviously live in Connecticut, and big UConn fan. So, Paige Becker and her team, and, it's just amazing what they're doing.
It's kind of funny because, we're all here in Connecticut, and I've been here now for 30 years, and it's like women's basketball has always been a big deal here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, UConn Huskies have won 1 million championships.
Yeah. And we were kind of always sitting here wondering, why doesn't the rest of America care at the same level? Now, UConn enjoyed unbelievable success for so many years, and that just breeds interest. I'm thrilled that now, on the college side, there's 20 programs that could win the national championship conceivably. It's very balanced. There's all these other big brand name schools that are competing at a high level. The depth, of the competition is fantastic. And then all of these athletes, I mean, the best of them then transition to the WNBA, and it just all feels very natural now the way other sports do. And so for that reason, we're incredibly bullish on women's sports into the future.
Love that.
So I love your story, Burke, because so many of our guests on our podcast are successful because they followed a passion. They loved what they're doing. And I think that your story is really inspirational to people who have big dreams but don't know where to begin. So what would you say to someone that is looking for a career in sports, whether it's social media, content, the business side of it? What would you say to a newbie, a youngster coming into the field?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that, the places where you could work in media associated with sports are a lot bigger today than they were 30 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was looking to get in and I knew it was media and not working for a team or a league or something like that, there was basically 4 networks, three: ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox was brand new, and then ESPN. Right. I'll give it 5. So there's basically 5 places on earth you could, and now it's so much more broad than that. You've got the social platforms, you've got the digital platforms, you've got the streaming platforms. A lot of brands on the consumer side have marketing teams that are specifically dedicated to sports.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the advertisers that you see over and over again, and see a lot of insurance companies and other things. So there's sort of sports adjacent careers, in a much broader sense today than there was, when I started out. And that's the good news. The bad news is, when we post jobs, it's like thousands, of people, right? So there is a ton of perseverance that's needed. If you just commit yourself to do it, treating your job, your career as a job, really, putting your mind, and networking and putting your mind towards getting in, while it takes time, it's a great when you land, it's a great place because it's a meritocracy, really. The best people who do the best work tend to get the best opportunities. And so I would just say to people, stick with it. It just took me a while to admit to myself that this was what I was passionate about. I just didn't know how to make it into a job,
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people in that category. So just dedicate yourself and, like I said, make your search your full-time job, because it's going to take some time, but there's a lot of opportunity out there. Social media in particular is exploding. And for younger people who want to get into sports, that's a great area to focus on if you have that skill set or can be a quick learner, because the dirty little secret is that nobody over 40 years old really knows.
That's a fact.
I mean, we have some new interns here with us today, and we're like, help, we need help.
My daughter, who's a recent college graduate, she graduated in May and is off working in the sports business herself, works on a social media team for the Premier Lacrosse League, which is a small,
awesome,
emerging professional lacrosse league, who's just launching a women's league called the
Very nice.
Awesome.
As they should.
We joke because I tell her I have a reverse mentoring relationship with her on social media. Like, she tells me what I need to know, and what I should and shouldn't do, and what looks good and what looks stupid, or whatever she would say. But there's tons of opportunity there for people on the front end of their careers, because again, it's a growth area, and there's naturally more opportunity for younger employees than there is for veterans, right? Because it just stands to reason. But
yeah, absolutely. So pivoting off the sports thing for just a second, what do you do to stay sane and to maintain your wellness? What is your process? Because you have a lot of things coming at you from all angles.
Yeah, I mean, the really tough part of, and it's something I mentioned a few minutes ago, is of this place in particular, is the 24/7 nature of it, right? And also the fact that when you stop and think about it, sports is like a leisure and entertainment, product for the most part. So what does that mean? That means, or when is sports happening? They happen at night and on the weekends primarily.
Right.
So all of a sudden, you're going from your desk or your cubicle doing your job to having to sort of pay attention to the things that you've prepared to do are all happening at night or on the weekends. So you can fall into the trap pretty easily of working all the time. Some of it, some of the work, depending on your position, has to be done around those events at night or on the weekends if you're in the production capacity or something like that. But if either way, you've got to carve out enough time in your day or in your week to take care of yourself, to take care of to decompress, to take care of your mind and your body, and just and not get caught on the wheel, if you will.
So what do you do for fun, Burke?
Yeah.
I'm a big live music fan, so which is completely unrelated with what I do professionally, and I think that's a key to anything on the leisure side of things. Just to unplug, to go do something that I don't have to think about what the score is or who's playing or how's it going, who's winning or anything. So I do a fair amount of that. My kids are grown now, so I have a little bit more time to get outside, and I like playing golf. My wife and I will just like go out and drive around and explore and do things.
Right.
When you get the other thing about raising a family, you get so engrossed in that for so many years that everything revolves around the family appropriately. But all of a sudden, we find ourselves empty nesters for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, let's jump in the car and go to this, this festival or this fair or go to this restaurant that we heard about or whatever it is. We like doing that. And again, my wife provides great balance for me because, I get in the car, she's not grilling me on like, hey, what do you think of the game last night, or or anything to do with sports, which is fantastic. And she's a big theater fan, so we go to the Bushnell a lot, for shows. We have a subscription to that. We go into New York when we can for Broadway.
Nice.
Which I don't know anything about, but I trust her completely. Literally, she'll go, "Do you want to go see fill in the blank?" And I'll be like, "Of course, good, we should go."
Right.
So I try and sort of just layer those kinds of things into my otherwise busy professional.
And it's so important, and it's something that we really like to focus on our Well Off podcast here, because the success of life isn't only in your job. You have to spread the wealth, no pun intended, across the whole spectrum and have balance and enjoy the off hours. So considering that, we do ask every guest what well off means to them. So what does that mean to you, Burke?
That's a great question, because there's a couple ways you could think of that phrase.
Right.
I don't know. To me, it's about balance and sort of serenity, right? Like being able to relax. I know so many people who can't unplug, and I mean, I might have been one of that person 15 years ago in the sort of in the apex of, or in the crux of my my climbing the ladder, if you will, as you said, right? And so it is very it's very situational, I think, depending on where you are in your life arc. But now with a few years under my belt and the ability to have a little bit more perspective, I think it's about trying to stay even keeled, trying to not have ups and downs, but just steady as she goes, and really be able to unplug and enjoy other. And it's hard, right? I do certain things. I try to be mindful of like what I do and how it impacts other people too. Because one of my routines, I tend to do a lot of catch up work like early on a weekend morning, right? Saturday or Sunday. I'll catch up and try and get my inbox under control. And a couple of years ago, I started prefacing every email that I send to my team with, you do not need to do
right now.
Like, this is for next week. I'm just getting it out now, right? And just that little tweak of like, and I've had people come up to me like, thank you for doing that. Like, because oftentimes we'll get an email from you. And by the way, if it is urgent, I'll tell them it's urgent. But like, if you can just do little things like that to give other people peace of mind too, then I think it just makes the whole situation a little bit more calm. And in business, the less emotion and the more calm, I think, makes for the most productive environment to actually accomplish what your goals.
Yeah, really sage thoughts for sure. And I've experienced the same in my own career. So, we can be tying up loose ends, like you said, or just kind of getting caught up. But the person on the receiving end thinks, oh my God, my boss is emailing me on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I have to answer. And that's not your intention at all. So, prefacing it is really important, and creating that culture of, hey, I'm doing this, you don't have to, really does go a long way.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've all been in, and by the way, everything I said is not, I can't suggest to you that I do 100% of the time.
Sure.
Like,
Right.
we all, that's the ideal, and we all try to strive for the ideal.
Thought that counts.
But I do think that, I've all, and I'm sure you all have been in workplace environments that have been more frenetic or more emotional or more sort of highs and lows, and it ends up being wasted energy, and it makes people anxious. And so I really try and foster a culture that even keeled. And be moments where it's really, really good or really, really bad, or there's a big problem that we have to solve, or there's something urgent. And so, but if you look at a graph, like, it would be as flat as it could be, right? Understanding that there's ups and downs and everything.
That's right.
Yeah. Before we let you go, I know you rub elbows with a lot of athletes, and I'm a huge fan of, a lot of athletes, but my most favorite is David Ortiz. Have you hung out with David Ortiz?
I have not hung out with the infamous Big Papi, although he did do a SportsCenter commercial years ago, that you probably know or remember.
Yeah.
Where he put on the Yankee cap that
Yeah.
I think Jorge Posada gave him a cap, and he's just trying it on, and then the Red Sox mascot walked by the conference room and was like, "What?"
Yeah, yes, I do remember that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you have a lot of, all the personalities and all the athletes, and that must be kind of cool. But
he's got a great reputation. He does baseball for Fox. He's really good on their studio. You usually don't see him until later in the season, but he's supposed to be just a wonderful guy, and a big personality, obviously.
Yeah.
Big stature.
He is my fave.
So I'm gleaning who that is, because I don't know who that is. But I have a question as lifelong Jersey girl, and you being from New Jersey and now in Connecticut, do you have a favorite sports team? And if so, who are they? And are you allowed to say?
Yeah, we're allowed to say we're fans.
Okay.
It doesn't. I'll preface it by saying my fandom doesn't influence the decisions I make here at all. And Gina's not going to be happy to hear this, but even though I've lived in Central Connecticut for 30 years, I've because you can't change your teams, and
You cannot.
And so I'm a New York guy through and through.
Okay.
Ranger Jets.
So my New York teams are the Yankees, Giants, Knicks, and Rangers.
Okay.
Oh.
No Mets. Like when from New Jersey, like you grew up, there was like Long Island and Queens were Jets, Mets, and Islanders,
Right.
and sort of New Jersey was much more Yankees and Giants.
For sure.
And all of Manhattan were like Knicks fans and Ranger fans for the most part. But yeah, it was kind of split along those lines. So I was my father was actually born and raised in Brooklyn, and he grew a Dodger fan.
Okay.
And and all Dodger fans became Mets fans.
Yes.
Because they could not become Yankee fans.
Yes,
that's right.
My grandfather was that way. He was a Dodger fan and then went to Mets.
That little known fact, actually, that the reason the Mets are blue and orange for their colors is because they took the blue from the Dodgers, who moved to Los Angeles, and they took the orange from the Giants, who moved to San Francisco. So that's why their colors are what they are. But I describe my father's greatest gift to me was that he let me become a Yankee fan when I know that it killed him, because he would never be a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, the Yankees were really, really good. It was like the mid to late 70s when I was a kid, and they were in the World Series like seemingly every year. And they won a couple with Reggie Jackson and that whole era, Billy Martin.
Yes.
And so I became a Yankees fan, and he just kind of bit his lip and said, I'm not going to force him to be a Mets fan, which is probably really nice of him.
Yeah, I would have like locked him in a room full of Red Sox stuff and been like, "You're not coming out until you're a fan."
Right. But having gone to Holy Cross, my entire college group are all Boston guys who
Yeah,
are,
sure.
you know, with one exception. We have a friend who's a Chicago guy, but I'm surrounded by Boston fans. And I guess that's the penalty I pay for living.
We're not so bad. We're not so bad. You guys aren't so bad. You know, we've all learned to love each other.
Now, I've gotten to know the owner of the Celtics really well, Wick Grousbeck, and you know, he's been very generous. I've come to love the Celtics, like never against the Knicks, but
Right.
Obviously.
I watched that whole run last year to the title, and that team is just filled with a bunch of great players who seem to be and are really good people too. And I think they have a really good shot to win again this year. So I'm rooting for the Celtics.
Yeah.
Well, Tara is now an honorary Celtics fan because her partner at her partner in business is a huge Celtics fan, and then her other partner in business is a huge Celtics fan. During the NBA Finals, she'd be like, "What is happening now?" She'd be texting me. I'd be like, "I can't talk to you right now. Like, I'm busy."
We got Tara to. It sounds like we got Tara to, like, when Caitlin Clark comes to town for
Yes.
Connecticut Sun, we could go to that. That would be
Right.
I would love to see
We have
Caitlin
this
Clark, yes.
documented, Burke. You have to follow through now.
no doubt.
That would be
I'd be
awesome.
happy to. Well, you have just been really lovely to chat with. And thank you for just being a lovely human being who's real and honest and, worked hard to get where you are and are committed to what you do.
And changing the game of sports every day. So we
Yeah.
appreciate all that you do.
We're trying. It's call it the toy department of life.
All these new and innovative toys and shows and yeah.
It's supposed to be fun. Like, it's supposed to be fun. We're supposed to have fun here. So that's what we try to do.
Well,
Love
that's
it.
wonderful. Well, you be well. Have a great basketball season and hockey season.
Shoot the thing and
Well, that's where we are, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. Don't worry. We'll get you sooner or later. We'll get you.
Okay. All right. I'm up
Thanks,
for it.
Berg.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.